Jeremiah Noon kept his apiary on the 12th floor roof of the Marquis building, a squat, soot-blackened structure wedged between a neon pharmacy and a shuttered theater. From street level, nothing suggested life stirred above the gargoyles and cracked cornices, but on the concrete roof, 40 cedar wood hives stood in disciplined rows. Their entrances pointed south, so the bees caught the morning sun as soon as it spilled over the skyline. Jeremiah wore patched jeans and a sailor's cap, and the city below called him the rooftop hermit. No one understood why a man of only 42 already walked with a pilgrim's stoop, or why he spoke so rarely, or why the last inhabitants of the 12th floor, accountants if rumor held, had broken their lease and scattered within 3 weeks of his arrival. At dawn, Jeremiah inspected the supers while the air still shimmered with traffic exhaust. He lifted frames heavy with comb, the color of brass, and knew, the way a fisherman knows tides in his bones, that yesterday's nectar run had been abundant. Yet abundance was not what made these hives singular. Something in Jeremiah's care, something in the herbs he grew along the parapet, something in the hushed prayers he murmured over each queen's cell, some alchemy unrecorded, gave the honey an unsettling property. When spread on the tongue, its sweetness carried visions, and those visions pointed unerringly at human wrongdoing. Jeremiah had discovered this years earlier when a construction worker hired to patch the roof begged for a spoonful from the bucket cooling beside the extractor. The man tasted the honey, smiled, then froze, pupils dilating like shadows under floodlights. "They buried him under the pilings," he whispered, voice breaking. Rebar through his lungs, poured concrete right over. Minutes later, the worker staggered downstairs to turn himself in for helping conceal the murder of a union steward. Headlines followed. Jeremiah locked his gates, but the truth of the honey's power spread as relentlessly as gossip always does. Now, every jar Jeremiah sold at the Sunday farmers market bore a label, "Consume at your peril." What that peril was, he never said. Most buyers imagined allergies or a dramatically overcautious legal disclaimer. A few guessed more closely. One of those few was Councilwoman Lorna Pruitt. Pruitt chaired the city's development committee, controlling which blighted lots became gleaming high-rise condos, and which stayed vacant long enough for her husband's holding company to purchase at pennies on the dollar. She had built an empire of kickbacks, extortion, and shell corporations. The last thing she required was an artisanal sweetener that made people remember things they had helped her bury, sometimes literally, beneath the waterfront promenade. On the first Tuesday in May, the councilwoman convened a clandestine meeting in the oak-paneled library of the Astoria Club. Present were Police Commissioner Stanton, Chief Building Inspector Vargas, and District Judge Elena Mott, each, in a way, her accomplice. Pruitt placed a small jar of Jeremiah's honey on the table, the way a pathologist might set down a vial of plague. "Have any of you tasted this?" she asked. No one had, but Stanton admitted 3 of his officers had resigned last month, after hosting a weekend barbecue where the honey had flavored every side dish. They now sat in federal custody, confessing to evidence tampering. Pruitt's plan was simple: buy or bully Jeremiah into withdrawing his product, and torch the hives if necessary. "We cannot afford a citywide outbreak of conscience," she said. Commissioner Stanton offered to send a task force. Judge Mott cautioned discretion. Search warrants left paper trails. Besides, urban rooftop beekeeping enjoyed legal protections far stronger than most residents realized. Vargas, ever pragmatic, volunteered an arson team from the fire marshal's office. Pruitt shook her head. "Messy," she said. "We approach him like investors. We pay, he ceases. If that fails..." She let the ellipsis hang until everyone imagined flames curling over cedar boxes. They agreed to reconvene in 10 days, by which time Pruitt promised she would have Jeremiah's silence, voluntary or otherwise. Across town, Mara Gale, stringer for the Herald Tribune, was attempting to parse an anomaly in the previous quarter's crime statistics. Arrests for cold cases had spiked 37%. Anonymous tips deluged the department. In each instance, the tipster cited a sudden recall of facts long suppressed. Mara chased patterns like a greyhound after quarry. She found one commonality. The awakened citizens had all attended either the Sunday farmers market or the rooftop honey tasting at the Pollen and Print boutique. When Mara sampled a teaspoon herself, she tasted midsummer meadows and burnt sugar, and remembered, with searing clarity, a night 6 years earlier when she'd driven drunk from a colleague's farewell party and clipped a parked motorcycle. No one had been hurt, and at the time, she convinced herself no one noticed. Yet shame now flooded her. She penned a letter of apology and slipped cash for repairs into an envelope addressed to the owner. Self-revelation shook her, but the journalist in her smelled a bigger story. If honey could deliver long-buried truths, who was making it, and how soon before the powerful tried to erase it? Mara's editor waved her off, too speculative. So she investigated on her own, stakes higher now, because she'd experienced the honey's sting. One cool Thursday, she climbed the rusted fire escape at the Marquis building and found Jeremiah with veil lifted, sipping tea among the hives. He watched her approach through the rising smoke of his smoker. "You came for more?" he asked. "For the story," Mara replied. She explained what she'd learned. Jeremiah listened without interruption, then turned his gaze over the serried boxes, bees drifting above like braille on the blue tapestry of sky. "It's not the story you think," he said. "The honey doesn't show crimes. It shows the truth we hide from ourselves. Crimes, secrets, betrayals. Same cloth, different pattern. The honey simply removes the dye." "Then why does it only reveal wrongdoing?" Mara asked. "Because that's what we refuse to see." His voice was gentle and strangely hopeful, as if truth, once faced, could heal. "But I worry more about those who will never taste it." He glanced down to the streets where sirens wailed like steel gulls. "They'll choose erasure instead." Before she left, Jeremiah handed her a small jar. The first reporter, he said, he had ever trusted with it. Mara tucked it inside her satchel, unaware it had just become contraband. 1 week later, Councilwoman Pruitt ascended the same fire escape accompanied by Commissioner Stanton and 2 plainclothes detectives. They found Jeremiah bent over a frame of brood, inspecting larvae for mites. "Mr. Noon," she called out, "may we talk?" He finished grafting a queen cup, then faced them, veil still in place. "Talk," he said. Pruitt smiled a legislator's smile. "We're impressed with your product. In fact, we'd like to ensure its exclusivity. I represent a consortium prepared to purchase your entire output." Jeremiah returned his frame to the hive and closed the lid. "The honey's for everyone." Pruitt's smile flattened. "We can be generous, 500,000 annually." "I don't sell the truth," he said. He removed the veil so she could see the calm finality in his eyes. Commissioner Stanton stepped forward, hand brushing the holster beneath his coat. "Then we'll need your license for inspection. City Ordinance 12463. I'm sure you're aware rooftop livestock requires quarterly review." Jeremiah met Stanton's stare. "You're not here to inspect, you're here to silence." Stanton shrugged. "One way or another, you're closing shop." Jeremiah raised his smoker, squeezed the bellows. Cool white clouds drifted between them. The bees, sensing agitation, rose in a darkening halo. Pruitt cursed and retreated, cuff at her throat. Stanton signaled the detectives, but they were too busy swatting panic from their faces. Jeremiah spoke softly to the swarm in a language Pruitt did not understand. The bees settled. The visitors fled. Below, the councilwoman fumed while Stanton dabbed stings with ammonia wipes. "Plan B," she said. Plan B began with a blackout. At 2 a.m., a transformer 3 blocks away blew sky blue petals across the grid, plunging the entire East Quarter into darkness. An anonymous call warned the fire department that an overloaded photovoltaic array on the Marquis building roof was sparking dangerously. Ladder trucks roared through lampless streets. Fire Marshal Ortiz, on Pruitt's payroll, led the response. Suppression crews hauled hoses up the stairwell, while Ortiz kicked in Jeremiah's door and gestured for him to evacuate. Jeremiah refused. "There's no fire," he insisted. Ortiz ordered him cuffed for obstruction. As firefighters chopped water lines that would flood the roof, Jeremiah shouted, "You'll drown the hives!" Mara, meanwhile, had been nearby interviewing a former narcotics detective who'd confessed under Honey's influence. When she saw the trucks, instinct propelled her toward the Marquis. She arrived breathless to find water cascading down gutters, bees forming a frantic cloud under emergency floodlights. Jeremiah, wrists bound, knelt beside a ladder truck. Ortiz directed men with flamethrower-like torches to sterilize contaminated structures before power was restored. Mara recognized arson disguised as protocol. She threaded through chaos until she reached Jeremiah. "What can I do?" "Record," he told her. "Truth doesn't burn." She fished out her phone, but Ortiz spotted her. "Press clearance," he snapped. "Freelance," she answered. "Then clear the hazard zone, or I'll have you detained." A firefighter aimed a torch at the nearest wooden super. Blue flame licked paint. Bees boiled outward in a shredding cloud. The air scented of wax and sorrow. Mara raised her camera anyway. She filmed Ortiz ordering systematic incineration of each hive, filmed Jeremiah's anguish, filmed the moment a firefighter flung a smoking frame over the parapet where it shattered on the alley asphalt below and revealed honey flowing like molten gold. Every drop burned. When dawn came and power returned, 40 hives were ash, tens of thousands of bees dead or lost. Jeremiah stood among smoking ruins with an unsteady calm. Ortiz returned the key-shaped handcuff butts to his belt and departed without apology. The city woke to a strange hush, like grief, but larger, threaded into traffic horns and coffee shop chatter. News bulletins reported a tragic safety incident. Jeremiah vanished from the narrative. The official release mentioned no arrest, only an uncooperative tenant. Still, Mara's footage circulated before breakfast. The public saw men in turnout gear torching hives, whose owner pleaded they were safe. Hashtags bloomed. One's bee arson, truth honey. Commissioner Stanton called Pruitt from an unlisted phone. The video's viral. The city's furious. "Release a statement," she ordered. "Blame a contagious mite infestation. Doesn't matter. People want blood. They're lining up at clinics asking if they can give statements under oath, like the honey triggered them." He hesitated. "Maybe we should pull back." Pruitt understood fear when she heard it. "We finish this." She scheduled an emergency council session to propose a citywide ban on rooftop apiaries. She planned to pass it overnight. Mara, meanwhile, sat with Jeremiah amid the char. He sifted ashes through his fingers, searching for signs of queens. "They killed the hives," he said, "but not the honey." He retrieved from a scorched cabinet below the parapet 6 glass jars, still intact, kept for winter feedings. "Enough for a reckoning?" "Make them taste it," Mara said. Jeremiah's smile was quiet. "They must choose." He handed the jars to her, one by one. "You know where to bring them." The next night, the council chamber filled with residents, beekeepers, gourmand chefs, environmental activists, and ordinary citizens stirred by a sense of violated decency. Outside, protesters waved cardboard cutouts of bees, chanting, "Let truth live." Mara arrived early, press pass prominent, satchel heavy with glass. She found Councilwoman Pruitt behind the dais, conferring with Stanton and Judge Mott. They looked harried, as if the city's anger were a storm cloud they could feel in their bones. Pruitt opened proceedings. Her voice, usually velveteen, quavered. "Be it resolved," she read, "that rooftop beekeeping constitutes a health hazard." A voice interrupted from the gallery. "Where's Mr. Noon?" It was one of the firefighters who had resigned after the barbecue. Murmurs rippled. Pruitt banged her gavel. Mara rose. "Madam Councilwoman," she called out, "I have evidence relevant to this vote." She lifted a jar so lights glittered through gold liquid. Gasps fluttered like birds. Stanton hissed into Pruitt's ear. "We remove her." Pruitt forced a smile. "Ms. Gale, exhibits must be pre-registered." Mara unscrewed the lid. "This exhibit needs no paperwork, only courage." She produced disposable tasting sticks, placed them atop the partition rail. "Anyone who wishes to understand the stakes today, taste." Court officers advanced. "Seize the jar," Stanton ordered. But the nearest officer hesitated. The story of the honey had spread even among the uniformed. Could truth be more contagious than orders? A young aide to Councilman Wu reached out instead, dabbed a finger, touched it to his tongue. He stood motionless. Tears welled. I altered inspection reports on the riverfront tower, he said. The concrete's substandard. If an earthquake hits, his voice cracked. Pruitt slammed the gavel again. Remove that man from the chamber. But another staffer tasted, then another. Secrets spilled, bribes falsified over time, harassment, hush money. The chamber became confession. Stanton backed toward the exit, jaw clenched. Mara stepped into his path, jaw raised. Commissioner? Get away, he warned. Thought you cared about safety. Why not taste? Stanton gripped his baton. For a moment, Mara feared he'd strike her. Then Judge Mott spoke behind him. Give it here. She'd watched the cascade of confessions with a face drained of color. Stanton turned, startled. The judge brushed honey on her tongue. She exhaled like someone surfacing from deep water. I fixed sentencing guidelines to profit private prisons, she said, voice barely audible but microphone hot. Kids lost their futures. She set the spoon down with shaking fingers. Flashbulbs erupted. Live stream counters rocketed. Outside, protesters grew silent as radios replayed the admissions. Pruitt realized she was alone at the helm of a sinking vessel. She waved the motion sheets as if to fan away the stench of guilt. This is a stunt, she cried. Illicit substances influencing public proceedings. Mara faced her. Taste it, councilwoman. Prove us wrong. Pruitt's lips parted in something between laughter and fury. I shall do no such thing. The gallery booed. Someone yelled, Nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Pruitt pounded the gavel until its handle cracked. She declared a recess and fled to the private corridor behind the dais. Stanton followed, but cameras blocked his path. Reporters clamored for comment on his subordinates' confessions. In the corridor, Pruitt marched toward her office, high heels clicking like distant gunshots. Jeremiah stepped from an alcove. He wore a suit poorly, as if borrowed. In his hands, another jar of honey glowed. She froze, throat constricting. How did you get in? Doors open where truth walks, he said. She scoffed, throat cleared, voice distilled back into authority. You think this honey scares me? I know my crimes. I embrace them. Power is never ashamed. Jeremiah did not advance. Perhaps, but power depends on silence. Tonight silence broke. She stepped closer, as if to snatch the jar. I'll rebuild. The city forgets quickly. Not this time. He tilted the jar. Light slid through amber like a slow sunrise. You fear not the honey, but what others will do once they hear themselves speak. For the first time, Pruitt's mask faltered. I can end you. You already tried, he said. Yet here I stand, truth intact, bees returning. Even now, faint buzzing drifted through an open ventilation grate, an impossible sound on the 12th floor roof of City Hall. Pruitt shivered. She couldn't afford mysticism. Leave, she ordered. Jeremiah obliged. He set the jar on a marble pedestal and walked away. Pruitt stared at it, caught between scorn and temptation. Her fingertips brushed the lid before she recoiled as if from a viper. She fled to her office, slamming the door. 2 days later, the Marquis building roof brimmed with new hives donated by a coalition of apiary clubs. Volunteers arrived by freight elevator, carrying nucleus colonies from suburban keepers. The city had rescinded the rooftop ban proposal the morning after the hearing, citing insufficient evidence. Commissioner Stanton tendered his resignation. Judge Mott placed herself on judicial leave. Inspector Vargas slipped across the border. The U.S. Marshals posted a warrant within hours. Councilwoman Pruitt remained in office, but her influence bled daily as colleagues distanced themselves. The mayor announced an independent ethics commission, funded ironically by fines collected from those who had confessed. Mara walked the renewed rows with Jeremiah. The bees, gentle and distracted by their new surroundings, landed on her sleeves like buttons of living jet. Will the honey always compel confession? She asked. Only if there's a lie, he said. Maybe someday we'll taste it for simple pleasure. She laughed. That day's far off. Closer than you think, he replied. Then, unexpectedly, he handed her a hive tool. I'll need help. The city does too. She hesitated. I'm a writer, not a beekeeper. Words, bees, both pollinate. He guided her hands to lift a frame pulsing with life. Listen. In the hum, Mara heard something beyond insects, the sound of a city reinventing itself, each wing beat a syllable in a new civic anthem. Far below, traffic moved like blood through arteries, but up here sunlight struck wax and honey with a cathedral's serenity. She tasted a drop from her fingertip, light as dawn, deep as forgiveness. She felt no vision this time, only hope. On the parapet edge, Jeremiah placed the last rescue jar. He let the lid loose so bees could drink their own miracle. Wind curled around them, carrying a future neither could yet see, now seeded with possibilities as innumerable as the bees exploring the newborn hives. And beneath the hum, beneath the clamor of a city murmuring toward truth, they heard, for the first time in many seasons, the steady collective heartbeat of something like conscience returning home.